like the brayer, you are adding paint to it. Now, I'm going to, as we go through, so this is an additive process. So you see, unlike the brayer, which is nice and thin, using the additive, you're actually going much closer to a painterly process. So in other words, you can put the brush, I have a palette to use with that so I can actually mix my colors and pick them up. And then when I put it down, the paints and the paint colors gives you a texture like some other kind of painting. Now, the brayer is also an additive, and this is where having a narrow one comes in useful sometimes, simply because when you want to tidy up your edges, so in other words, here, I'm trying to fill up that. I'm not too worried about completing that end there because I'm going to use it for something else. And things like stencil brushes, you're putting paint down. So these are all sort of painterly techniques. The additive techniques is effectively the same thing as what we use when we're painting. Usually have a bowl of water with clean water so you don't leave your brushes to dry. Palette knives with jelly prints, you have to be careful with the metal ones simply because it's the one thing that will damage a jelly plate. It's the corners and the edges and so on. So in some ways, it's much better to use the plastic ones because there's no way that you're actually going to mark this. But you can actually use the edge of a palette knife then as a subtractive. Put a bit of paint here. Right. I'm going to spread it round. So now, having put that in, now I'm using a brayer simply for speed. So in other words, if you're using a brush, think about it that you have a certain window of time. That window of time is something that you learn from practice. But until it's dry, you can remove it. So you can put your designs in with cotton swabs. Again, with catalyst sponges, a little bit better. And then things like stamps. You press things in, and when you lift them, the paint comes out as well. So you see, so basically on that, I can put little foam dots. And then basically you put it on, you blot it off on the piece of paper. Rolling the bubble wrap on this is subtractive. So it's sort of taking the paint off the jelly plate so that when you're finished, you can actually pull out a plate. Right. And you can use all sorts of things, including things like kitchen towel. So for example, put a kitchen towel down here, press it in, and you pull it out. If the paint is wet, it leaves an imprint. Okay, now my window for taking a print is rapidly closing. So I align my jelly plate again. So you see, I've done all those bits and pieces on a single jelly plate. Now this was drying, so I'm actually going to rub it a little bit more because my window might have almost closed. And no, I've got quite a bit here, from almost clean white paper to very smudgy. This is one of the things that we're going to do in another case. It's a question of registering it, because what I've done is I've taken the translucent piece of paper that I did the ghost copy, the ghost print, with the pink magenta, and I've put it, because it's the translucent one, I can almost see the registered without having to make a registered plate, but I'll show you how to make those as well. And then when you pull it off, the subtractive, by now that is the additive and the subtractive.